Those of you that have been around a while, remember I did a video on Pydantic about a year ago, which is a library that aims to allow users to represent and validate data using incredibly powerful interfaces that are similar to data classes. In that video, I used version 1.10, but since then version 2 has come out, and while not an awful lot has changed, I thought I'd make an updated video showing you how to do it with version 2.0. So I'm going to be showing you not only a simple example on how to create and validate data using Pydantic, but I'm also going to be showing you an example of how you can use it to represent and work with API data as well, because it is really, really good for that. Of course, if you find this video helpful at any point, then consider leaving a like to let me know, and maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But with all that out of the way, let's learn how to use Pydantic. To get started with Pydantic, we first need to install it. So we're going to do pip install Pydantic like this, and you can see they've done something very clever and made it Pi. I think that, oh no, it's spelled with a PE in normal English. So they've done something very fancy there. And we can see that we install Pydantic 2.7.2, Pydantic core, typing extensions, and annotated types. Pydantic is very type hint heavy, which is why it does all that stuff. And we can start creating a model. So we need to, from Pydantic, import base model. And then for our model in particular, I actually want to import datetime as DT. And then we can create a model just by simply making something inherit from base model. So this order is now a Pydantic model. And we can use this similarly to data classes, or pretty much exactly the same as data classes, really. So we can set an ID equals int, and we're going to set an item name is a string. We're then going to set a quantity as an int. We're going to set created at, and then we have, say, delivered at, which equals dt.datetime or none equals none. So anyone that's used data classes or even attrs before will find this all very familiar. You know, you define something at a class level, you define its type. You don't necessarily need to define a default value, though you can if you want. And it's all, you know, it should all look very much the same. So if you were to then create an order in our code, so we can do name equals main, whoops. We can do O equals order, and then if we set, say, the ID equals 1, the item name equals test, quantity, yeah, that'll do. Equals, we'll set this to like 3. And then we print O. We get a perhaps unsurprising output, which has, you know, ID 1, item name equals test, quantity is 3, and everything is, you know, formatted properly. And you even get the date. Which one of these is the date? This one. This one's the date, the exact date and time I'm recording this video. There you go. Everything looks very normal so far. Everything looks very familiar. You might be wondering, if you've never seen Pydantic before, why you would want to use it over something like data classes or attrs. And there are a few cool little things that Pydantic does that that data classes especially don't do. And there are actually some things that attrs doesn't do either. So one of the cool things, attrs might do this, but it does type coercion. So we're going to get an error here. But if you do this, we can see that the type is actually set to an integer. It's not displaying in the same way as a test would. And we can actually verify this by doing print type O. Dot quantity. There you go. We can see it's a class int. So even though that we've passed in a string, our quantity, because the field is actually an integer, Pydantic has taken the liberty of converting it for us. I think in attrs you have to manually tell it to do that. In Pydantic it does it for you, which is really nice. One of the other particularly useful things you can do is validators. Now attrs does do this, data classes does not. But we could say, if we imported field validator, and this is one of the changes between version 1 and version 2. In version 1 this was just validator, in version 2 it is field validator, and this is a decorator, so we can set field validator and then we pass in the name of the field that we want to validate. So in this case it's going to be quantity, and we can set def validate quantity, and then we're going to set value to be an int, and you'll notice we are passing in the class, not self. So class is actually a Well, this turns into a class method technically. So you pass in the class and not the instance when you do this. And that's going to return an int. And then we can say if value is less than 1, we can say that the quantity must be greater than 0. We can raise a value error. Otherwise, we just return the value straight up if it's fine. And now if we set the quantity to 3, we can see everything's fine. If we set the quantity to -1, it starts complaining. And it throws a slightly bizarre looking traceback, but you can see one validation error for order. It gives us the name of the field that errored and the type of the error and then the message of the error. And it also gives us some other nice details as well that I don't think version 1 did. So you can use this to validate fields as you pass them into the model. If we do something similar for field validator created at, because we wouldn't want this to be in the future, so we can do validate created at, and it's going to understand exactly what I want to do. Yes, it is actually going to understand exactly what I'm going to do. So we can actually probably do this instead. There we go, that's a bit clearer, because then we can use backticks to say that created at must be in the past. So it's now comparing it to the current time. If it's bad, it'll raise an error, and then we can see, we can do, say, if we put this one into the future, much like the other one, it will error. But you'll notice that we actually get an error for both. So it would tell us that firstly, that quantity must be greater than 0, and it will also tell us that created at must be in the past. So it accumulates all the errors together. It's not going to be that, oh no, I've messed up quantity, fix that, oh no, I've messed up created at. It tells us both at once, which is actually really nice. Weirdly, one thing it doesn't check by default is that assignments pass the validation checks. So if we just fix all this, and we can get rid of that. So if we do o.quantity equals -1 or -1, we run it, we won't get an error. We can actually print o.quantity to confirm. This is what we get. It sets it to -1, so we can bypass it that way. If we don't want that to be a thing, then we can pass a configuration. So you do that by passing class config into the model itself. This is anyone that's familiar with Django will recognize this. And then it'll be validate assignment equals true, I think. I haven't put this in my notes. So we're going to see if that's right. It is. There we go. So we can now see that our value quantity is being validated when we assign it. And we can now see it will actually give us o.quantity or quantity equals -1. It will actually tell us where exactly the error originated. And it will give us exactly the same error as it would have done if you passed it into the constructor. So now we've talked a little bit about how Pydantic works and I showed you the basics. I want to show you a more real world example using an API. So the work that I've done with Pydantic specifically is mainly with APIs. They're really good with them because you can do so much. There's so many options that make it much easier to deal with. So if we pip install requests, there we go. Or you can use your preferred thing of choice. It really doesn't bother me. And then we import datetime as DT. We then import requests. Oopsie daisies. Oopsie daisies. Whenever I turn the screen recording on, I just lose the ability to type apparently. And then we're going to do from Pydantic import base model. And we also got to import fields because we're going to be using that. And the API we're going to be using is the UK government, not that one, the UK government's bank holidays API. So we're using this, one, because it's a very simple API, and two, because it's really funny. So if we go over and we actually load it, we can see we get this JSON back, which is all very nice. We get our divisions, we get our events, we get the title, we get the date, we get the notes, and we get whether or not bunting is appropriate. Which is perhaps the most British thing I've ever seen in my life. And I had to use it. I just had to. But it does also allow us to show a number of things because it is a bit of a non-standard API. And we can use Pydantic's advanced features to compensate for that. So first, we want to actually fetch data So we're going to do, oh God, we're going to data equals requests dot get URL and then dot JSON. So this will get exactly what we're seeing here in a dictionary. And then we want to start defining our models. And I say models because we're actually going to be doing a few. So you see everything is nested in here, where you can actually nest Pydantic models and Pydantic will just be able to work out what to do. So by that I mean we can do a class event base model, and then this will handle everything in these events. So the title, date, notes, and bunting will all be handled in there. So we can do title equals string, date is a date time dot date, notes is a string, and then bunting is a bool. We then, if we go one level up, we then have our divisions. So if I actually close these, we can see that we have 3 separate divisions. And inside the division, we have the division name and the events. So we can do class division base model. And then we could do name string. Or actually, we'll do division string and we'll come back to that. And we'll do events list of event. So you're now seeing we're already using another Pydantic model. And then we have the actual bank holidays themselves. So I'm just going to call this bank holidays. And then we will have England and Wales division like that. We have Scotland as a division and Northern Ireland as a division. And that's our entire API, pretty much. Now this won't work at the moment, and we'll talk about why that is in a second. But if we then do holidays equals bank holidays, and then we do just pass the data in like that, we will see that, we get a good number of errors. So England and Wales, it's complaining because the field is required. Now this is one of the not so useful errors that Pydantic provides, but the problem is that the input value uses kebab case, and in our Pythonic class name structure, we use snake case. Now this is quite easy to do, so there are 2 ways of doing this. I will show the second way later because the division has a problem with this too. But to actually change it for all of your attributes within a model, we can do class config again, and then we can set alias generator. And then this will be a callable. So for us, we want to make sure that our aliases, and this logic it feels kind of backwards. So what we're doing is we want to define the logic to convert this into this, not this into this. So we're going to be replacing our underscores with dashes. And that will convert our Pydantic model name or attribute into the actual name that's provided in the API. And if we do that, then we'll actually get a successful thing back, and then we can print holidays, and this is going to be just a disaster because there's just so much stuff. If we do holidays, say .division, dot events, what is going on? Events 0, and then we'll just do that. We get an error. Why is that? Oh, because it's not division, it's the name of the division we want. We can see that the first event is New Year's Day 2018, and that bunting is appropriate for New Year's Day. Remember that. That's very important. And yeah, that all works perfectly fine. Now, what I was talking about before when I said that there was something wrong up here is that we have this division, and then division is inside it, which is how it appears in the API, sure, but it's not the best name for it, really. It's not the clearest. It would be clearer if it was called name, because we then have the division, and then we have the name of the division under name. But of course, if we do that, it's going to complain because, you know, England and Wales.name, it doesn't exist. You know, it's called division in the API. And this is the second way of creating an alias, where you can set this value as a field, and you can provide the alias name is division. Now, again, it's a little bit, well, I suppose it's not a little bit backwards when you think of it like this. It is the conversion from this into how it appears in the API. But now we've set alias to be division, and now Pydantic knows that when you get division back, it should be passed to name. And now it works just fine. So if I were to get print holidays.scotland.name, we can see that we get Scotland back. If we print division, the name division, we don't, because even though the API has set it to division, and even though it's an alias, we haven't set it as such. We've set it as name. So in the Pydantic model, it is name, even though in the API is division. So whether or not you would want to have that is entirely up to you. It really depends on the API. It really depends on how you want to wrap these things. But in this case, it can be used to make things a little bit clearer that the name of the division is division.name rather than division.division. So the final thing that I wanted to show you before we go is that using these Pydantic models, you can actually create properties on these. So if I create a property on event, and if we set def is passed self bool, and this will be true if the event is in the past. So if the event has already happened, then this will be true. If the event is in the future, this will be false. Obviously, the API doesn't provide that, but using the fact that this is a model, we can provide a property that compares it for us. So we can then set, is this in the past true? Because it was New Year's Day 2018. If we look at the last one, and I'm actually going to print the last one out. I don't know how far it goes. See that Boxing Day, Boxing Day 2026 is the furthest it goes. My goodness. This one actually does have notes. That's interesting. And bunting is appropriate for Boxing Day. Keep that in mind. But you can see that it's in the future. It has not passed, so our property fails. Or it doesn't fail, it returns false. But the property is not returned in the wrapper or the string representation. It still just returns what the API returns in this bit, and then we also have our property that we've done. You could also put methods on it if you want. You can, well, it's an object. Treat it as you want. You can do anything. Let me know in the comments if there's anything really cool about Pydantic that I haven't talked about in this video. I have barely scraped the surface of what Pydantic can do. It can do so much. There's so much to it. You could probably make an entire course about it if you really wanted to. So let me know what your favorite things about Pydantic are if you've used it before. If you've never used it before, let me know what you're planning to use it for now, because it'd be really cool to find out. If you want to know all sorts of tips and tricks about Python elsewhere and all sorts of different things, make sure to watch the Python is Awesome series. It'll be on the end card. And I'll see you in the next one for whatever we do next.